It's absolutely amazing to be speaking to you again. I believe we spoke on reinvention of schools. I think quite a few months ago now. It seems like only yesterday as well. And how are you? How's everything?
Oh, Nick, it is so good to be talking with you again.
Oh, thank
And
you.
that was a fantastic show to have been able to participate with you, and really appreciated that it had included the student voice.
Yeah,
So it's wonderful that you were representing that voice so well.
thank
So
you.
yes, it's we are living in different times
I
these
know.
days.
All across the world. Yeah, especially I'm speaking to you now. It's absolutely amazing that we can speak through technology. Honestly, we take it for granted every day, don't we? Well, it's absolutely amazing. So, as we discussed in a brief economic situation a few months ago, and now where I live in the UK, we've had a recession. That's sad to say, and this is due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many losses of lives and so many ill, sick in hospital, and it's so sad to be hearing it on the news. And childcare and schools have been closed all across the planet as well, and a lot of education standards have dropped down, especially. But
Mm.
in the USA, there's a critical support package, and in England, we've just introduced, free school meal vouchers until summer, thanks to Marcus Rashford, footballer. And we've started the furlough agreement, which gives wages that people would have. But sadly, due to the pandemic, a lot of businesses had to shut down, and a lot of people have sadly lost their jobs. So, could you please tell us a bit more about the critical support package in the USA, or maybe other different things that the USA are trying to do to help the economy through this crisis?
Absolutely. And just by way of brief background, my role at the Committee for Economic Development of the Conference Board, or CED, is overseeing the portfolio of our education policy program work. And so we do a lot of research and policy on a range of key issues facing our country. So, as you have described, the UK, the world all over, is experiencing a lot of devastating impacts, economic impacts, because of the COVID-19 virus. And here in this country, our leadership, our administration and current president, worked with Congress to respond and provide some initial economic stimulus and relief packages. And of course, there was an immediate need to support businesses from collapsing in certain industries.
Good.
There was funding for states and localities to help support these increased costs in terms of dealing with the pandemic for public health and safety reasons. We too had included unemployment supports because, again, with all the businesses closing, with schools shutting down, uh, we had an astonishing number of people out of work. So there's a great deal of unemployment. It's still high at over 10% currently right now. And we have over 15 million people on unemployment. Our current package, actually for unemployment and loans, had ended at the end of July, but our Congress is currently negotiating and trying to figure out the next stimulus package, which is going to be quite costly, but it is hugely needed just
Yeah.
because of the sheer devastation in terms of losses. So they are trying to work to be responsive to the ongoing needs. We just don't know what the trajectory is of this pandemic at this time.
Yeah, that's it's great that so many procedures have been there to try and help the wider community to try and get back on track. And I think in this world we've kind of underestimated the power of this disease and how it's affected all of us. Because only a couple months ago we started laying back on all the ground rules. We started to let people mix out more, which was definitely not the right time, as people are now saying there is a second wave that's going to be approaching. But I don't believe that it's a second wave. I that it's all one, and you know, there's never going to be like a second, third wave. It's happening right now, and we've got to see it as that. We're not going to see as it might be worse in the future. It's really bad now, so that's why we have to try and put all these different procedures here to try and stop it right now as well. And we've had the worst possible start to the year. You know, new decades, we thought of going to different places, you know, venturing out, discovering more things that could develop and evolve our communities, you know, try and, you know, like improve on our future goals and dreams. And now this massive setback has destroyed nations with financially and economically as well, with you know, all of these businesses going bankrupt as well. So it's just devastating to hear about this, and but it is good in a way that we're trying so hard to get this all sorted out. Um, so yeah, that's I think you said that pretty well, and thank you for explaining that to people who might not understand it completely in America. And now on to my second question. My mum has been in the childcare sector for many years.
Mm.
And you know, education is so critical, especially the early ages, to a child's future and how they will get a job and how they will develop their skills. So how do you fit? What are your thoughts on the education system and how it's being dealt with? What are your thoughts on that?
And excellent issue. Excellent that your mom serves in that capacity. It's such an important part of education in terms of early learning and childcare. And in fact, if there is an intention and goal to impact a child's life and their trajectory, it is in those earliest years. Those are the most critical and the most important, especially from a developmental perspective. We've learned so much from the research that the years between birth and when kids start the formal school system in this country, it's around 5 years old, that has the most active building of the
Yeah,
brain at those stages. And that's when the architecture is set in the brain, and that really sets the foundation for all future learning. And in fact, it's during those earliest years that that children experience the development of what we refer to as executive function skills, which are those all important skill sets that our employers want to see in the workplace with new employees in terms of critical thinking and teamwork and interpersonal skills. So all of
mm,
that is laid in those earliest years. So we do have to make sure that we're continuing to focus and pay attention to the provision of early learning and childhood education and childcare. It's been especially difficult at this pandemic point in time because so many childcare businesses have closed. We've had nearly 60% of our childcare industry in this country collapse because these are very small businesses. And it's so important to provide that type of safe and early learning setting for kids. It allows parents to participate in the workplace, and it also, of course, provides that educational setting for kids. So right now, we just have this very, very, very challenging problem of not having childcare accessible. And so many parents now are home and they're trying to look after their kids, and so some families are making decisions to stay home because even as the economy begins to reopen, they can't go into the workplace because there are no childcare settings in which to bring their children. So it's created this domino effect. And, you know, as we like to say, we've got to have childcare accessible, quality childcare accessible and affordable, so that kids can access this and parents can return to, you know, to the workforce. And it does require, you know, in terms of the upper levels of education, it is so important to keep kids in school. Actually, that applies to every level, because we also know from research that when they miss big periods of time, you know, including summer breaks or due to absenteeism or a pandemic, that there's definitely learning loss. Research has borne that out. And we know, for example, in a recent report, that kids here in the US, when they head back to some form of schooling this fall, starting now and in the weeks to come, that they're going to start behind, you know, to about, you know, a third of learning loss in both reading and math. So trying to prepare for that has been very challenging for school districts. You know, there's the health and safety side of it, and there's the academic educational side of it. And because we've had so many school districts here and school systems go to online delivery, again, because of public safety considerations, it's also a challenge for the school system and educators to deliver education online. You know, you have to make sure you've got the right equipment for both the schools and the kids, as well as understanding, you know, how to actually teach in an online environment, because that's quite different than having the kids in person. So it is really important that we continue to invest the funding needed to help schools stay open, stay safe, for both the kids and the school personnel, and that it's done in a way that is going to deliver, you know, successful learning experience. So we have to continue to plan, continue to be innovative and creative.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot being brought up there, which is definitely important. You know, the early stages of your education are probably the most vital, because when you're at that age, around the age of 5, maybe 6 as well, when you're starting school, you don't really have that mindset of you know, you have a strict schedule, which you will then develop on in life. Eventually getting a job, you wake up at this time, you do that. And that's why it's so vital when you're younger, you get used into that schedule, and you start learning the key points that you'll develop on throughout your life. So yeah, that's definitely an important stage. And to online classes have definitely been more difficult for students to understand across the world, and not on the aspect of it's too difficult, but on the aspect of you're not getting that motivation that you would inside class, when you have all of your friends there with you saying, oh yeah, you have to do that, oh yeah, I'll help you with that, and your teachers are there explaining it in front of you. But now you're not used to that now, and you have to do it all by yourself behind the computer screen. Yes, you might send an email to your teacher. That's not necessarily the same as speaking up front as well. So yeah, it's definitely been harder for all of the education sides across the world as well. So yeah, definitely important point to be bringing up there. So you know, we spoke about what have been done for the all of the situations that the world are currently undergoing, but I would like to hear a bit more about you this time. So what moment in your life motivated you to push yourself to have a career within the CED and the education system? What motivated you?
Well, how much time do we have? It's been quite the journey, to arrive at CED. And it was not planned that I was going to be based out here in Washington, D.C., in the United States. after university. And just as a side note, I have to share that during my time at university, I had the wonderful opportunity to do a semester abroad program. And I came to the UK, to London, and it was a combination of working for a member of parliament as well as participating in school. So it was a combination work education experience, and it was
Fantastic.
wonderful. So I always have a soft place in my heart for the UK. But I thought after graduating that I would stay in my home state of California on the West Coast, here where I was born and raised. But I got an opportunity to come and work for a congressman from California. And I thought it would just be a grand adventure. I'd never been to Washington, D.C. before at that point. I didn't know anybody in Washington, D.C. But I had studied political science and economics and was interested in public policy, and thought, hey, that would be a great place to learn and to grow, being at the nation's seat of government, at the center of policy making. So I made the leap, took the leap, and spent almost 7 years working for two different members of Congress. I'm from California, and that's when the work started on education. And my interest in education actually started prior to that, more so in high school, in terms of really understanding and reflecting what my teachers meant to me and how they inspired me, and how my education had really opened my eyes into the world and increased my understanding of who I am and my relationship to the world. And yet I also noticed that some of my friends from different high schools in the city I grew up did not have the same kinds of resources and assets and programs. And so I really started to wonder, well, who's making the decisions here? I mean, why are some places, having more beneficial and interesting, types of programs? So my wanting, my level of inquiry as to why and how policies are made and decided. So it was something I wanted to further explore when I got to university. So after my time working in Congress, my member at the time ended up joining the Clinton administration when President Clinton got elected back in '93. And so I therefore had an opportunity to consider working for one of our federal agencies, and I wanted to go to the U.S. Department of Education. I wanted to continue learning about education and have an opportunity to make an impact. So I got that chance to work in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. So it's kindergarten through high school here in the States. And it was an incredible experience to learn the legislative branch of government, how Congress works and writes laws. And being at the U.S. Department of Education in the executive branch, learning how they actually get implemented. So I felt those are real complementary in terms of understanding policy. So that was great because it gave me a chance actually to travel out across the states. In our country, our system of education is very decentralized. So there's more local control at the state and city and school district level. So that was another great learning experience. And then I decided I wanted to go deeper into understanding research, because I believe good policy needs to be based on good research and good practice.
Yeah,
So went to graduate school and then worked for two different really large research and evaluation shops to really get grounded in education research. And then I knew that I always would want to come back to Washington, D.C., because I did my graduate work in the New England area here in the States. So I wanted to come back. and reconnect with my advocacy roots, and continue to work in the civic public sector. So I ended up landing, in this organization, CED, which is nonpartisan, which is also something I very much appreciate, and combines my interests in problem solving, in education, and working specifically with the engines of our economy, the business community, which is a stakeholder group I had not had extensive exposure to before. So I was very excited about the prospect of learning more about this sector in society, and their role in education. And so I've been here at CED for over 7 years now.
Wow. So that's absolutely amazing, honestly. It's like it's amazing how you just went from studying political science and economic. It, it was just so much to listen to. It's absolutely amazing how you developed. You went to England, you went to the capital for the first time, and you were in the congressman. You were. It was just absolutely amazing to hear that. You should honestly write a book about your story. Because I'm sure you'll become a bestseller.
Reflection, you're so kind, Nick. Reflections right on the policy journey.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting adventure,
Hmm.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I'm sure that you've had your, obstacles, yet you've overcome them, and you've become an absolutely amazing person because of it. And you wouldn't take anything away from that, and I hope that you don't regret anything that you've done, because what you're doing is absolutely amazing. The work that you've done within what you do and outside as well, and you're campaigning for equal rights for education as well, and it's just definitely something that needs to be touched upon more often, because I think we don't really realize how important education is to really shape all of our future, especially the kids, some kids that I spoke with as well. So yeah, thank you for that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so we've spoke about your absolute amazing story, by the way, and the world is suffering quite a lot now, and it's probably the worst year I've ever lived through.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure about you, but it's definitely the worst year that I've ever lived through. But what problem in the world do you think that we're facing that hasn't got enough recognition? That it might be a
Mm.
problem that's really kind of like the underdog that isn't really seen upon enough.
That's such a great question, and just a framing of where we're at in the world right now. And there are so many huge issues. The one thing about the pandemic is it really has highlighted the fragility of some of our systems, in government and in programs. We've seen that play out for childcare and early learning, because it had a very challenging business model to begin with. But on a macro level, just I think understanding the degree of interconnectedness that we have in the world, and that also means the interdependency. And so a recognition that what happens abroad and within our own country's boundaries, does impact, one another. I think, really in reflection, we've been, at home, contained, inside, and really trying to understand that it's important to listen to others, and that it's more important to listen than talk. That's really the basis of empathy, which I think is needed We all come from different backgrounds and different experiences, and yet there is this universal level of suffering. And to work to understand and figure out how to solve the problem, because there is no one exact solution. It's going to take everybody in all sectors coming together to figure out how to get a handle on this virus, how to best contain it, how to live life while dealing with it. And so trying to be respectful and honor individuals, to really seek common ground in understanding, our own humanity, because there are so many things at stake right now, the health and well-being of the entire world. So, and also I think understanding, and this is challenging too, that for change and to overcome such a huge problem like this, it's going to take time, and it's hard to be patient. It's very difficult to be patient, but being consistent, being persistent, being respectful over time is what is going to get us, I think, to the other side. This is not a one-off, where the pandemic is here, it's with us. We've got flu season coming up in the fall. There's still so much we don't know about the pandemic. So being able to come together and be very planful and intentional and cooperative, I think, are all important characteristics that we need to focus on moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And going off that, there are still traces of the Black Death still in the world. And people think that one day this is all going to end. That isn't true. There's always going to be a couple cases across the world, because this has got so big. It's got uncontrollable. You cannot control it anymore. And I think it's all of these precautions happen too late, and you have to really, I know it's hard, but you have to try and foresee the future, see, could this be a possible thing that could affect millions of lives? And that's we have found out that it was all the way back in 2019, late 2019, around November, it originated, and it's half a year later, and it hasn't got any better. It's got worse. It's getting worse every day. And all these conflicts that we have to be here together, especially now. We are so desperate to try and get rid of this. We have to unite. We have to because people are taking this for granted. They're going outside, they're socializing, they're acting like it's not even there. And that's a good way to think, because it won't have, you have to try and act like it's not there, to try and it maybe help with your, if you're suffering from mental health, especially a lot of people have, because of this virus, but that doesn't mean it's not there. So you still have to have all of these precautions. You have to wear a mask, which I think should have been implemented a long time ago as well. And it's all a new thing. And with everyone in the world, humans normally take a long time to cope with something, to get used to something. And that's definitely a downside, because we really should have started putting these precautions in much earlier. And definitely what you said, we have to be united and be together as well. So this brings me on to kind of like my next question. People suffering from so much stress, and we cope with certain problems. But how do you cope with all of these stresses that have been brought upon you?
Yes, and it is definitely a stressful time for everybody, and it's relative, to each individual's situation. But very accurate description, everybody is definitely much more stressed, and a lot more anxiety has been introduced as a result of the pandemic. And because of so much uncertainty too, only from the health standpoint, but from, a job standpoint and a
Yeah.
social standpoint of, not being able to interact, engage family, friends, our social circles. So, and we also have seen, as you had noted, Nick, we've definitely seen a rise in cases of, depression, yes, and also domestic violence has increased, and there's just a lot more concern as a result of that. And so you're absolutely right. There's so many different impacts. So for me, it's trying to work to keep things in perspective in terms of understanding the larger context. So for example, while the virus is, just awful, and a lot of lives have been lost to it, um, the one piece about it that is positive is that it's not automatically fatal. So if you contract it, it doesn't mean you are going to die. So trying to remember that there are ways to mitigate it, that we're implementing, testing, and that we do have facilities and services in this country, which we need to make sure all of our citizens have access to in order to treat it and address it. So there are interventions from a public health and safety standpoint. So trying to remember, and also we know there are lots of folks who are currently working on trying to identify a vaccine. Several companies in the mix. So knowing that, in terms of that timeline, maybe the end of the year, beginning of next year, which gives us a little bit more hopeful context to think about. And, not trying to think about everything all at once, because that definitely gets overwhelming. So one of my goals has really been to try and seek a balance in terms of activities, and having had to adjust my routine and schedule, but making sure that I'm trying to have physical activity, some exercise, getting out, getting fresh air, movement, that physical domain, and trying to spend time on the right side of my brain and be creative. There's a drawing class that I actually take online, which I love. And, figuring out, for your well-being and, your, spiritual side, ways to find to nurture and just, be as expansive in that, whether it's drinking a cup of tea. I actually do a tea class. It's a tea and meditation class. So trying to really leverage these different opportunities that have now come up as options,
Yeah.
to access. And I feel very, very fortunate to have that opportunity, because I know not everyone has, computers and broadband access and the same kinds of programs and options.
Mm.
So I also try and remain grateful, and have gratitude for what is there.
Yeah, definitely, because I think a lot of people take for granted all the technology that's brought upon us, when there are so many people in the world that don't have this, and they don't have that social interaction online, and as well as you said, getting out there, having exercise, that's definitely going to get a lot of your mental health up. Especially that's been scientifically proven. If you get your heart rate up, it's very
Mm.
healthy for you. And yeah, especially trying new hobbies as well. I tried a bit of cooking at the start of this.
Oh,
Um,
great.
yeah, and it's just you have to try and find the best out of a bad situation, and it might not make it go away, but it will help you. And as you said, I think early on when you started speaking, that if you contract this horrible virus, there's not 100% chance that it will be fatal. There is still a chance that if you like you started eating healthy and you are quite you're quite active, and there's a very good chance that you will fight on. You will fight against it, and you will persevere and survive. So there is quite a low chance of passing away from this virus, which is thankful for, but not thankful that there still is that chance. And yeah, you've said that question absolutely amazing. Giving new ideas to people watching this. So yeah, thank you for that. And so this is my final question, and I thank you so much for the time that you spent here today. It's been so interesting speaking to you. But this is quite a simple one. What quote do you try to live by every day?
Mm, that's a good question. I think I think there's probably not a single quote,
Yeah,
but maybe a couple of sayings. Like, I'm fond of saying, life is short, make it count. So that I can try and live with a certain amount of, awareness and intention, and, being conscientious, and, understanding the importance of relating and connecting. And, we are here, for a limited time. So, so that's one of the sayings. And then I'm always, because I love to laugh so much, I always say that don't ever take yourself too seriously,
yeah,
or things happening in the world too seriously, although there are very serious things happening. But to always remember that you can be lighthearted and light-spirited. There are those moments. It's not all about, the darkness and gloom. We can find beauty, joy, with people, and in friendship and in love. And so there are things to continue to celebrate and be grateful for in life.
yeah,
So those are
yeah,
just kind of a couple of sayings that continue
yeah,
to inspire me in different ways.
yeah, and I'm sure will inspire many others, especially in this lockdown, because we're here together, and we have to try and make our most out of our lives. We have to try and live our lives to the full. And also another thing is don't be too harsh on yourself.
Mm,
Honestly, we make mistakes. Life is about making mistakes. Growing is about making mistakes. So never be too harsh on yourself, no matter what situation it is. Um, so yeah, those are all my questions. You were absolutely amazing at this. You're a natural, honestly. Thank you so much for being here today. I know time is very precious for you, especially. So thank you.
and Nick, I just want to thank you so much for thinking of me, for inviting me to your special program, and really to also thank you for your leadership and your voice. I mean, especially now in expressing and talking about these issues, for youth and everyone alike. It's like you are helping to set an example. So thank you for that gift. And it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah, it has been an absolute amazing